please welcome Pam Braun.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you so much. Can everybody hear me? Great. I'm so happy to be here tonight. What a great crowd. Anytime that I get a chance to kind of share my journey and share the information that I learned along my journey, I'm just thrilled to do it. So I also want to thank Miriam for making this happen and inviting me here this evening. So this is what I thought I'd do tonight. I'm going to talk a little bit about my story so you know where I'm coming from. I'm going to talk a little bit about how the book came to be. And then, most importantly, I'm going to talk about what the experts say we should and shouldn't eat and how we should and shouldn't cook it. If there is any time left at all, I am going to give a very brief demo demonstrating how to cook those two things that I brought, the chips and the tapenade, but we'll see how that goes. Okay, so let's get started. Before I do anything, I'd like to introduce you to Norm. This is Norm. When I first got diagnosed, I was working as a freelance computer consultant, and I sent out a blast email to all my clients saying that I wouldn't be working for a while. I was taking time off to take care of myself. And a couple of days later, this little guy showed up in the mail. And I was so touched that someone took the time and the trouble to buy it and wrap it and the get well card and all of that I kept him. And he became my mascot through my cancer journey. He went through all my chemos with me. He helped me with the recipes. I named him Norm, short for normal, because that's what I wanted more than anything else. I wanted my life to go back to normal. So that's Norm. He opted not to come this evening, though. Seriously, though, I want to start out with some disclaimers. That's my name. You'll see I have no initials after it. I'm not a dietitian. I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not a nurse. I'm not a doctor. I don't play one on TV. That's it. This is what I can put after my name, and I need to change this slide because I am now an 11-year cancer survivor as of this month. Thank you very much. You never forget. I'm a cookbook author, I'm a former restaurant owner, and I'm a former chef. I want to talk to you tonight about the relationship between nutrition and cancer. And this is not a black and white science at all. This is shades of gray. It's shades of gray all over the map. Because it's shades of gray, there's no proof to anything I'm going to tell you tonight. No proof. And it doesn't matter who was standing up here, if Dr. Oz or Dr. Weil or Hillary Clinton, I don't care. Anybody who is standing up here tonight, there is no 2 and 2 is 4 proof to any of this. But what we do have, we have a boatload of evidence, some of it convincing, some of it not, but we have a lot of evidence that food affects cancer. This is the second expert report, and I don't know if you're familiar with this or not. This came out in 2007. It was published by the World Cancer Research Fund and the American Institute for Cancer Research. This was and still is the largest study of its kind to date. This is what they did. They started looking at 500,000 food studies. They whittled it down to 7,000 of the most pertinent. 21 of the top scientists in the world, this was a global effort, took 10 years to go over these studies and to determine what foods cause cancer and what foods prevented it. It's updated continuously on the web, by the way. If you Google it, it's called the Continuous Update Project. This is the best they could come up with after all of that. Convincing evidence, probable evidence, and limited suggestive evidence, which is like possible evidence. So there is no proof. Because there's no proof, I think this is the most valuable tool in our toolbox, in my opinion. Does anybody watch The Good Wife? Okay, so not this last season, but the first 2 seasons, there was a judge on there, if you remember, that made them all say, "in my opinion," before they said anything. And well, in my opinion, this is the most valuable tool we have in our toolbox. And clearly, that's what you are all doing here tonight. I also think we need to be the very best advocates for ourselves. It's our lives. I did this from the start of my journey up until recently. The start of my journey, I was in a bed at Cedars-Sinai, and I asked my doctor, I said I wanted a second opinion. And he said, you don't need a second opinion. I'll tell you when you need a second opinion. As soon as I could stand from that bed, I walked down to the basement at Cedars, and I got my own biopsy slides, and I sent them off to another doctor. Recently, my doctor said to me, I still go twice a year. He said to me, Pam, you've got high cholesterol. I said, how could that possibly be? I eat vegetables. He said, well, you know, it's genetic. You've got high cholesterol. I said, well, you know what? Let me take off a little more weight. Let me bump up the exercise and see where we are. He said, okay. Nonetheless, 2 weeks later, a nurse calls me from his office and says, Pam, doctor wants you to put you on a statin. What pharmacy should we call that into? I said, you know what? Let me talk to the doctor. So I called him back. He's an amazing guy. He picks up the phone I love this guy, right? Anyway, so I call him up. He answers the phone, and he doesn't say, good morning, Pam. How are you, Pam? What he answers the phone with was, I wondered how long it would take you to call. He knows me. He's been working with me for 11 years. We need to be the very best advocates we can for ourselves. So this is my story. I'll go over it briefly. I call this my clueless picture. About a month before my diagnosis, practically dead, absolutely clueless. Anyway, as Nancy said, she pretty much told my whole story. As Nancy said, I was 52 years old. It was 11 years ago this summer. I wasn't feeling very well. What I was very, 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 very tired. And not only was I tired, I had a kind of a steady pain in my back that never went away. And I knew something was wrong. I said, this can't be normal. This just can't be normal aging. So I didn't even have a doctor at the time. Up until then, I'd been pretty healthy. So I took myself to an urgent care clinic. I took myself to an emergency room. I took myself to somebody else's doctor. All the initial tests came in fine. But meanwhile, I said, no, something's wrong. So one weekend, I found myself up in the local mountains here at Arrowhead. And I took myself to that little hospital up there. And because it was a small hospital, this guy really listened to me. And he said, the symptoms you're telling me can be anything. I'm running everything. And he did. He ran $12,000 worth of tests in one night. I went in at 9 o'clock. At 5:30 in the morning, he came in and he said, I think we found a malignancy, and I think it's lymphoma. But when you get back to L.A., check it out. And by the way, this guy, I found out, I have a nurse friend up there who works up there, and this guy's often criticized by his higher-ups for running too many tests. I send this guy a Christmas card every year for telling him I'm still here and thanking him for helping to save my life. Anyway, I really didn't know what lymphoma was. When I got back to LA, I found a doctor. As I'm sure many of you can relate, I went from no doctors to being absolutely lousy with doctors. And what they found out I had, it was not lymphoma. It just appeared to be lymphoma because it was in so many lymph nodes. What I had was gynecological in nature. As a matter of fact, one of my newfound doctors took me in the back in his office, and he circled on his computer screen all my affected lymph nodes. And he said, you see this? He said, 10 out of 10 times this is lymphoma. But it wasn't. It was gynecological. So they scheduled me for a complete hysterectomy. While I was waiting for my hysterectomy, another doctor said to me, Pam, we want you to get a mammogram, because they knew it was gynecological. They just weren't sure where. They said, Pam, we want you to get a mammogram. If you're lucky, you'll have breast cancer. And I thought, oh, my God, how did I go from that to that, like that? But I did. Anyway, I got to be one of the few people ever to go in for my mammogram praying for breast cancer. No luck, it came back clean. A couple weeks later, I had a very successful surgery, and what they found out I had is one of the rarest of women's cancers. I had fallopian tube cancer. Fallopian tube cancer is not studied much, although they're looking into it more now, because they think all ovarian cancer may start in the fallopian tube. So all ovarian cancer might very well be fallopian tube cancer. Anyway, it's really not studied much. It's lumped with ovarian. It's treated as ovarian. It has slightly better odds than ovarian. That being said, I was given a 15% chance of survival and a 75% chance of recurrence. Because here's the thing about ovarian cancer. It tends to come back. Do you know most women get clean from ovarian cancer? Most women don't generally stay clean from ovarian cancer. So I was involved in a clinical trial over at Cedars-Sinai for this very thing. It was for a hopeful drug for ovarian cancer survivors who'd gotten clean to help them stay clean. It was supposed to be a 5-year study. After 9 months, they pulled it. Too many women had fallen out of remission. Clearly, the drug wasn't working. I was the only woman at Cedars who didn't fall out of remission. And I believe, and there's no proof, okay, but I believe with all my heart that it's food that kept me healthy then, and it's still food that's keeping me healthy now. I knew my odds weren't good, so I got very calm at the whole thing. I got kind of zen-like, actually. And I thought, well, if it's my time, but I'm going to do everything I can to stay here. And I started researching food. And this is what I found out. Some foods, mostly in laboratories, on rats and mice and human cells, not humans, human cells. Clinical trials are very expensive to put together and take years. So this is what we got to work with, okay? We got rats, mice, and human cells, and some people. Some foods have shown to cause cancer. Some foods have shown to prevent cancer, so I started putting together a diet around those two food groups. That was 2004. I tweaked it for a couple of years. 2007, the American Institute for Cancer came out with that second expert report, and my diet, lo and behold, was parallel to it. So I knew I was on the right track. Before we get to the food, I just want to say one more thing about why I wrote my book. I wrote the book for 3 reasons. 1, I like to eat. 2, I like to cook. And 3, I wanted to make a difference. I like food. I am not one of those people that eat to live. I live to eat. Matter of fact, when I first got sick, I remember saying to a friend of mine, looking for any silver lining in this dark cloud, I said, well, at least I'll finally be thin, because I've struggled with weight my whole life. No, I ate my way right through cancer. I had my surgery on a Tuesday morning. The doctor said I'd be in there a week. I said, okay. So I'm in there Tuesday morning. I don't get out of intensive care till Wednesday night. That's all tubes and fluids and stuff, right? Thursday morning, I'm in a regular room. They give me some kind of liquidy breakfast of some kind, and I drink it. Thursday afternoon, they give me a mushy lunch of some kind, and I eat it. Thursday night, they give me a regular dinner, and I eat it, every bit of it. I am, and always have been, a member of the Clean Plate Club as long as I can remember. So over at Cedars, they got a bunch of interns that come around. So the interns come around at night, and they see my clean plate, and they said, did you eat that? I said, yeah. They said, you ate all that? I said, yeah. They looked around and said, did you have a family member here or something that helped you? I said, no. Understand, if you put food in front of me, I'm eating it. They said, you're going home tomorrow. 3 days I was in there instead of a week. I like to cook. As Nancy said, I started cooking at a very young age. My mom got sick when I was 10 years old. It was the 50s and the 60s, an old-fashioned family of 7. We sat around a dinner table every night. I got very comfortable in a kitchen at a very early age. I'm home if I'm in a kitchen. Like Nancy said, I managed my first restaurant at 21. I owned my first restaurant by the time I was 29. And I wanted to make a difference, and this is why. This is something I didn't know before I got cancer, and I think everybody should know this. And it has become my passion since I've gotten sick to get this word out there. 1 out of every 2 men is going to get cancer in his lifetime. 1 out of every 3 women is going to get cancer out of her lifetime. Children being born today have a 50-50 shot at getting this disease. And new stats just came out of the UK that say 2 out of every 3 children being born today are going to get this disease in their lifetime. We are in the middle of an epidemic. Slightly better news. They now also estimate that 35% of all cancers can be avoided with diet and exercise. Some a little more, some a little less. 38% of breast cancers don't have to happen. 7% of colon cancers don't have to happen. 50% of stomach cancers don't have to happen. And then that whole number gets bumped up to 50% if we add our sunscreens, not smoking, and getting our screenings. Half of all cancers. So yeah, okay, we need money, we need a cure, but we also need to be more proactive ourselves so we can help stop this thing in its tracks. Okay, so I already told you about this. I want to look into this, and I want to talk to you a little bit in more detail about this. And as huge as this thing was, It is only as conclusive as the foods they studied. So if they didn't study oranges for prostate cancer, we don't know. Okay? Okay. I have a summary, and I'm not sure if I gave you guys that or not, but if you're not, I will happily email me and I will send it to you. I gave it to you? Okay. All right. These are the top 10 recommendations after all of that. It's not rocket science, but I want to go through it. I feel like David Letterman. Okay. Number 1, be as lean as possible without becoming underweight. I struggle with this. I've struggled with weight my whole life. I am 25 pounds lighter than I was when I got cancer. Be physically active for at least 30 minutes every day. And they aren't talking about climbing Mount Everest. They're just talking about going around the block 30 minutes every day. Avoid sugary drinks. Limit consumption of energy-dense foods. Sugary drinks, your sodas. I don't know if you guys remember this, but last year, our legislature wanted to pass a warning sign, a little warning label to be on our sodas, just like cigarettes, that said dangerous to your health. And it got shot down because the soda industry said, hey, if we got to do it, so do the cookies and the candy, right? So it got shot down, but it's coming. That's how important this is. Energy-dense food. What's energy-dense food? Any food that's got a lot of calories and not much else going for it. Your cookies, your cakes, your chips, not mine. Mine are baked. Your junk food, basically. Eat more of a variety of vegetables, fruits, whole grains, and legumes such as beans. Again, stuff we've heard all our lives. Limit consumption of red meats such as beef, pork, and lamb, and avoid processed meats. Beef, pork, and lamb. Pork is not the other white meat, as our advertisers would lead us to believe. It is a red meat. This particular study says limit your red meat to 18 ounces a week with the goal of getting it down to 11 ounces a week. I don't eat any. I haven't had a piece of red meat for 11 years. Avoid processed meats. What's processed meats? Any meat that's been processed at all. If it's been smoked, cured, salted, preservatives in it, your bacon, your ham, your lunch meat, your hot dogs, they don't give any leeway on this. They say none. Out of the 500,000 studies that they looked at, and they whittled it down to the 7,000, they found 2 things convincingly cause cancer. Only 2. And it happened to be colon cancer, and it was red meat and processed meat. If consumed at all, limit alcoholic drinks to 2 for men and 1 for women a day. You know, I saw a cardiologist speak from Cedars, and she recommends a drink a day for her patients. It's good for your heart, supposedly. She says if you don't like it, hold your nose. So I think this is one of these places where you need to make your choice for yourself on this. Limits consumption of salty foods and foods processed with salt. The study says 2,000 milligrams a day, which is a little less than a teaspoon a day, which is plenty if you're cooking for yourself. Not so much if you're eating processed foods. It's in everything. You need to read your labels. Don't use supplements to protect against cancer. I know that's hard, but as of today, and everything can change tomorrow. Things change all the time, okay? But as of today, there is no evidence that supplements help protect you against cancer. Everything right now says get your vitamins from food. Then they have a special interest group to breastfeed exclusively for 6 months. And then this only came out a couple of years ago. When I got cancer, there were no recommendations for survivors. None. After treatment, cancer survivors should follow the recommendations for cancer prevention. Now they have enough evidence to show that it also helps us survive afterwards. This is the American Cancer Society's recommendations for prevention in survivors. It's pretty much the same thing. The one place they differ is that they say adults should engage in at least 150 minutes of moderate intensity or 75 minutes of vigorous intensity activity each day. They define vigorous activity by if you are exercising and you can't hold a conversation. I don't do it often enough, but I climb this mountain that goes up to Mulholland in the valley, and I can't say a word. That's vigorous. These are my personal daily do choices. This is what I do every day. I don't think about it anymore. I do berries, I do citrus fruits, I do cruciferous vegetables, which is your broccoli, your cauliflower, your hearty greens. I make salads of that for lunch. I do a little bit of dark chocolate, an ounce to an ounce and a half. Fresh garlic, I do green or white tea. Herbs and spices. They don't mention this at the American Institute for Cancer Research, but herbs and spices are loaded with antioxidants. And we are lucky enough to live in Southern California where we can have these things all year long. The herb that's got the most antioxidants is oregano. There are more antioxidants in oregano per gram weight than blueberries. It grows like a weed. It's hard to kill. It just keeps coming back. I put it in my soups. I put it in my salads. I put it in my pizzas. I put it in everything. And then those are the difference between herb and a spice is one is dried. Then those are your spices with the most antioxidants, and I put that in a list for you. Omega-3s. Best to get them without your supplements. They come in walnuts, salmon, soybeans, halibut, shrimp, tofu, winter squash, snapper, scallops, supplements as a last resort. Onions. Shallots have the most antioxidants in your onions. Then the next ones are northern red and western yellow. I do a little red wine. That's my choice. I do about 4 ounces a night. I do a little juice glass full with my dinner. Soy. This is one of those places that the American Cancer Society did a 180 on. I don't know if you guys remember this. A while back, they said no to soy. If you had a hormone-based cancer, don't touch it. Now they're saying it's okay. It's okay to have 2 servings a day. And it's not, you can't blame anybody. They just got more data and they learned more, and they're saying it's okay. That's why this is not a black and white science. Stuff changes all the time. Turmeric. Again, no proof to this, but this is a little Indian spice. It comes in curry. They're doing a lot of research on this, that it might help prevent cancer. And of course, I've never met a fruit or a vegetable that I don't like. This is what I don't do. I have not had a piece of red meat in 11 years. And nobody likes a double-double more than I did with grilled onions. I couldn't eat it now if it were sitting in front of me. Your taste changed, your head changed. I don't want it anymore. And more than that, I never want to be sitting at my dining room table again with my stomach in a knot saying, oh my God, I've got a 15% chance of living. That burger just isn't worth it for me. I don't do it anymore. I don't do processed meats, and I used to love a good sausage sandwich. I just don't do it anymore. Sugar, there are a few recipes that I use a natural brown sugar, but you know what? I try to stay away from it. I just try to stay away from sweet things, period. One isn't really better for you than the other, and of course your white breads, white rice, anything that turns simple carbohydrates, anything that turns into sugar quickly in your system. Fats. Omega-6s. Fats are very confusing. Omega-6 is what they call an EFA, an essential fatty acid, which means our body needs it, but we don't produce it. So why is it in my don't list, okay? Because we should in this country, well, any country, okay, but we should have a ratio of omega-6s to omega-3s of 3:1. Omega-6s are mostly our vegetable oils, okay? Your corn oil, your safflower, your sunflower. That's where you find most of it. We eat so poorly in this country that our ratio is as high as 50:1, and that's inflammatory. I think this is one of the reasons that we have a cancer epidemic, because the safflower or the sunflower or the palm oil, the palm kernel oil, it's in everything if you read your labels. And salt. Again, 1 teaspoon a day. I took this at Costco. In my opinion. This is one of the reasons also that we're in a cancer epidemic. What I didn't take a picture of is all the people out here lined up waiting to get it. I'm not a fussy person. I'll go anywhere with my friends to any restaurant. I'll go to a steakhouse. I'll find something to eat somewhere. There's nothing on this menu that I would eat. Yet people are lined up for it. There's some kind of processed meat. There's a deep-fried chicken with cheese inside. There's a hot dog. And somebody said to me recently, said, Pam, well, what about the salad? I said, well, I couldn't find the exact nutrients on that, the nutritional information. They don't like publish it out there. But there are 50 grams of saturated fat in that salad. You'd be better off with a burger. The croutons, it's got the bad oils. And the salad dressing, and I'm sure that's a processed chicken. I spoke up in Sacramento a couple months ago, and I got a text from one of the women. I said she used to like these things. She used to like these salads. And she texted me and said, thanks a lot, Pam. I'm walking out of Costco now without my salad. I said, good. Okay, so now we know what to eat. Let's talk about how to cook it, okay? Any meat, and that includes chicken. I do some chicken and fish. Should not be cooked at a high heat. When you cook meat at a high heat, carcinogens form. What's a carcinogen? It's a cancer-causing agent, okay? Do we know how much of it we can eat? We don't. We know nothing, practically, but we do know it causes cancer. So it's best to stay away from it. You should cook it on a medium heat. It should not be blackened. It shouldn't be broiled. It shouldn't be grilled. That black stuff that tastes so good, no, that's carcinogenic. Yeah. Not deep fried, certainly. Don't deep fry anything. We're going to get to vegetables in a minute. And if you are hell-bent on throwing something on the grill, because Labor Day is coming up, okay, there are ways to mitigate it, your chances of getting carcinogens forming. You can par-cook your meat a little bit before you bring it out. Have it half-cooked. Marinate it. Flip it often. Have it on a medium heat. Have a spray bottle of water out there. And if you see any flames, squirt them. I don't want to badmouth Whole Foods at all. They were nice enough to give us all this food here tonight. But what I do want to make a point that don't think everything you buy at Whole Foods is healthy, okay? And everything you buy at Ralph's is bad, because that's not the case. I took this at Whole Foods. You need to read your labels everywhere. There's plenty at Whole Foods that isn't good for us either. This is a thing they started by me. I don't know if you got it here, but in Sherman Oaks, they do street food. And this guy is barbecuing chicken out in the back. He's grilling chicken. You see all that smoke coming up? That's not good. Nothing should be smoked. What happens is the grease from our meat drips down on our heat source and comes back as smoke. That's when carcinogens form. So this guy is taking the temperature of this. They trained him to do that. Okay, that's good, right? But what you can't see on that is that chicken is absolutely black with char. So again, I don't want to badmouth Whole Foods. You just need to be aware everywhere. Fish. Okay, fish is very confusing. I wish I could tell you that all wild caught is good and all farmed is bad, but that's not the case. We did pass legislation in this country this year, and it's supposed to go last year. It's supposed to go into effect this year. They have to put on all fish. They have to label it, its common name, and they have to tell us where it's from. Why is that important? Our farms, Canada's farms, are a lot cleaner than other people's farms, other countries' farms. I like these two charts. There are these two sites for charts. These are seafood. They'll tell you seafood and fish, both. They'll tell you which are highest in omega-3s, which are highest in mercury. Do we know mercury causes cancer? We don't, but it makes sense not to put it in our bodies. And which ones are ecologically harvested safely, or eco-friendly, anyway. So you need to be aware. And I tell people, look, pick 4 or 5 fish and go with them. Pick one that, 4 or 5 fish that fit in the chart, because even like canned tuna, the albacore tuna has more mercury than the chunk light. So check it out. And this is fish, actually, that I put on my grill. And you'll see I put a little foil underneath it with holes in it so that the grease, whatever, the fat can drip down, but I don't get the smoke back up. And the other way is I put it in parchment paper. They even sell bags now. Cooks real fast in the oven and not on a high heat. Vegetables. Up until very recently, if you'd asked me, I would say, do whatever the heck you want with a vegetable. You can't hurt it. Now they're looking into another carcinogen that forms in vegetables. But they don't know for sure yet. Okay, they're just looking into it. It's called acrylamides. And it's a carcinogen that forms when some starchy vegetables are cooked on a high heat, like potato chips and French fries. And it also forms in some grains and coffee. Coffee, there's nothing we can do about it because it's when they roast the beans before we get them. Grains, they say, if this concerns you, and again, we don't know yet, maybe you don't want to do your toast dark. Maybe you want to do it light. But the American Cancer Society says eat a wide variety of vegetables. Don't be afraid of it, but I would not deep fry anything. They also say that a microwave is perfectly safe. It doesn't harm the food. It doesn't harm us. As long as it's a microwave-safe container, not last night's takeout container that gets all shriveled up in there. No, that's a no-no. But you can steam it. You can griddle it. I wouldn't boil your vegetables because the vitamins leach out unless you're doing a soup or stew. Except, this is kind of funky. This is a funky little thing about corn. Cornell, oddly enough, Cornell University did a study on corn. And the longer you boil an ear of corn, the more antioxidants it gets. I don't even know how they think of these things. Let's leave that thing in there an hour and let's see where it is. If you boil an ear of corn for 50 minutes, it is loaded with antioxidants. Go figure. I don't know if I'd boil it for 50 minutes, but you know what? When I'm cooking corn, I'll leave it in there for an extra 10 minutes. What have I got to lose? Maybe it'll help me. Herbs and spices, I gave you this already. Okay, here's just a couple little tips. Here's another funky little tip about garlic. Garlic has been known for its medicinal properties for centuries, right? And it has anti-cancer properties. And if we are eating it raw, you're absolutely fine, okay? But what do we do when we cook it as a rule? We mince it or we chop it, and then we throw it in the pot. It loses those anti-cancer properties. Somebody did a study, and again, I don't even know how they come up with this stuff, but if you chop your garlic, if you're eating it raw, you're fine. Okay, but if you're cooking your garlic, you chop your garlic and you leave it on a side for like 20 minutes, it retains those anti-cancer properties and holds on through them through cooking. So what I do is I get in the habit of chopping your garlic, putting it on the side, get the rest of your ingredients together, then go back to your garlic. Artichokes are the one vegetable, doesn't matter how you cook it, it never loses its antioxidants. It is like an antioxidant giant. And the leaves have different vitamins than the heart. So if you eat it, you should eat the whole thing. And I don't remember which vitamins they were, but they're different. GMOs, this is a hot topic, so I just wanted to go over it briefly. People are very passionate about this topic, right? Genetically modified organism. And let me just define this, okay? An organism whose genetic characteristics have been altered by the insertion of a modified gene or gene from another organism using the techniques of genetic engineering. This confused the heck out of me until recently. I would sit down at the breakfast table and look at the newspaper and see that they're picketing Monsanto again, and I would say, what is the problem? Haven't we been modifying our food for years? Why is everybody so upset now? Well, I read a little more, now I get it, okay? We have been playing with our food for years through selective breeding and crossbreeding. Selective breeding is that cow gives me the best milk, that's the one I'm breeding. Crossbreeding, you take a white rose and a red rose, you get a pink rose. It's what gives us the head of cauliflower in the grocery store the color of broccoli. But it's done in a natural setting with the same or like species. This is a brand new technique. It's done in a laboratory with as many as 7 different species into one food. They're putting a pesticide in the corn to make it more pesticide resistant. Good or bad? We don't know. I can tell you this, though, because it's brand new. This could turn out to be the worst thing in the world for us, but there's not enough evidence that we know yet. I can tell you this. 20-some countries have banned this altogether. 64 other countries have mandatory labeling. That makes sense to me. You walk into a grocery store, we should know this is GMO, this is non-GMO. We have no way of knowing in this country. The only way to know it's non-GMO in this country is to buy 100% organic. And it has to say 100% organic. Because if it doesn't, there's some little loophole, and they can get like 2% of GMOs in there. Maybe not, probably not, but they can. So the only way is to buy 100% organic. Let's take a look at organic. Produced or involving production without the use of chemical fertilizers, pesticides, or other artificial agents. Good or bad? We don't know. There is not enough evidence right now for the American Cancer Society to come out and say that organic is better for us, or non-organic, the residue is bad. There's enough residue to be bad for us. This is a study that was done out of England. This is the largest study of its kind on organic. They looked at 350 food studies, and they did find that there were more vitamins in organic, and there was some heavy metals in non-organic, including cadmium, which is the same metal that comes in batteries. There's a little controversy over this. Again, nothing is clear because this was produced by an organic farm. So, everything is a little clouded. If this concerns you, there's an agency called the Environmental Workers Group. It was started in 1993. It's nonprofit. Supposedly, there's no political ties. They're only looking out for us. Every year, they analyze the pesticide residue that's left on fruits and vegetables, and they put out a list of their clean 15 and their dirty dozen. I know a lot of people who just print that out and laminate it and take it to the grocery store with them. So if you can't afford organic all the time, maybe you just want to buy the organic of the ones that are on the dirty dozen list. This has nothing to do with cancer, but I just thought this was fun. 1902, this is the very first year that the USDA tells us what we should and shouldn't eat. Come out with this little pamphlet. It was the USDA was formed under Lincoln, but they did nothing with it until 1902, okay? And this guy, this Dr. Atwater, he had it pretty right. He was high protein, low fat. He was doing pretty good. 1911, some woman comes in, screws everything up. World War I, we ration, of course, because everything's going overseas to the guys, right? So we're eating cottage cheese and corn, and everything is going overseas. 1919, there were 5 food groups, one of them being sugar and sugary foods. Look at this little girl. Simple suppers are the best. This is what she's eating for dinner: bread, milk, and plain cookies. Poor kid. She's probably working in the mines, too. World War II, we're rationing again, and we're learning to play with our food. Vitamin donuts. Putting vitamins in donuts, and again, we're rationing. 1946, we had 7 food groups, one of them being butter and fortified margarine. I like these ladies. This is my era. This is when I grew up in the 50s and the 60s, and they're looking at some kind of whipped cream cake here, and she's pointing. It's nutritious. I'm doubting that. This is what I grew up with. Not 4 food groups. Get your basic 4s in every day. 1970, we're back to 5. One, I think it's back to sugar again. 1992, we get the pyramid that we're all familiar with, right? Do you know what's on the bottom of this pyramid? Bread, cereal, rice, and pasta. 6 to 11 servings a day. Are you kidding? This, in my opinion, this is the start of the obesity epidemic in this country. 6 to 11 servings of bread a day. 2005, we have the most confusing pyramid I've ever seen in my life. I have no idea what I'm supposed to eat or not. But they did start to exercise. They did incorporate exercise for the very first time. 2011, we get a plate. This is our new geometrical shape. We have a plate. Half fruits and vegetables, half grains and protein, and dairy. I like this one better myself. This is the Harvard University plate. They don't do dairy. They have more vegetables. They do water and healthy oils. That's all I got, guys. I don't know how much time we have if you want to go over some questions. I thank you. Thanks for your attention. Should we do a demo? This is very, very quick demo. This is ridiculously simple. It's so simple, I'm almost embarrassed to show you. But, you know, I put out the tapenade and everybody wants the recipe. They love it. Okay, so I'm going to show you, I made baked corn chips, which are so much healthier than the stuff you buy in the store, right? That's deep fried in the unhealthy oil, in the omega-6s. Okay, so I'm going to try to do this one-handed. This is what I do. I just take a regular corn tortilla. I'm sorry, corn tortilla, not flour. And I cut it into quarters. This is a kind of a big corn chip, so I'm going to do this in 6, but I usually do it into quarters. And just cut it into, you know, the shape of a chip. I put it on a baking sheet. Just layer them in there. I take an olive oil, a spray of olive oil, and spray it. I do a little salt. Just very light on the salt. And you throw it in a 370-degree oven for about 10 minutes. That's it. And you come out with a much healthier appetizer for yourself. You make that whole bowl in a half an hour. And I serve them to guests, and people say, where did you get these? Nobody knows they're homemade. They love them. Okay. A tapenade is also equally embarrassingly easy. I sometimes do this with green olives, too. If I do green olives, I usually use capers. This has 4 ingredients in it. That's all. Okay? I do a can of olives. I do some garlic, a couple cloves of garlic, a little bit of olive oil. And this is usually pretty expensive in the store, too, when you go to buy it. And you don't need salt because your olives are already salty. Right? And some pepper. That's it. You can do this by hand. I have a friend who does not have a Cuisinart, but it takes a while. And just pulse it. Well, I don't know. It doesn't matter. Just pulse it. Don't keep it going because you want it chunky. You don't want it mushy. And that's it. It's easy to stay healthy. It's easy to cook healthy. I think they're looking at your questions. Yeah. Well, she's asking that not to use any food in a can. And, you know, there is so much controversy over so many things, okay? So I say so much of this you have to make up your own mind. The American Cancer Society, the American Institute for Cancer Research, they don't say against it.
Okay, so what we're going to do right now is ask you to write down your questions for Pam on your index card, and you're going to hold them up, and somebody will come by and pick those up from you. Pam, do you have your cookbook for sale here tonight?
I do, right over there. Some people have already bought it.
So over here at this table, she's got her cookbook.
You can get it on Amazon, too.
Second question, do you have a website with this information on it, meaning the stuff you shared with us? A website?
No, some of the information's on my website. It's pambraun.net, but not everything. But if there's anything that I shared here tonight, you can also email me, pam@pambraun.net. I'd be happy to send it to you. Almost everything I did share with you tonight is in my book.
This one says, is it safe to eat raw vegetables?
Well, you know, again, there is a lot of controversy over everything, and I'm going to say to you, I think when you're looking this stuff up on the net, make sure you go to a trusted source. Make sure you go to the American Cancer Society or the American Institute for Cancer Research or Sloan Kettering or the Cleveland Clinic. Make sure you go to a trusted source. Because if we Googled that, you would find stuff all over. I have not heard anything to the contrary that it wasn't safe. And again, none of your trusted sources say that's not safe.
Okay, next question. How do you get low sodium olives?
I don't know if you do. But, let's look at how much is in this whole can of olives. You get 2,000 milligrams a day. In this, okay, so in this can's about 500 milligrams. So, if you're having a little tapenade, you're still okay. I mean, you're not going to eat this whole can.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. If you haven't been on the greatest diet, can you change and reverse the bad and bring in the good effects?
Yeah, and I would say yes, you can. I would say if you eat real badly, and I tell people this all the time, make a small change. Don't try to do 180 degrees. You might not stick to it. If you have 3 sodas a day and you try to stop altogether, you might not stick to it. But go down to 2 sodas a day. And then the following week, go down to 1. If you're used to having a burger every day for lunch, that 7th day, have a chicken sandwich. Make a small change. And I guarantee you won't want it anymore. Your taste buds will change, as will your head.
Okay, so this question is asking, can you discuss the benefits of avocado oil? No olive oil, please.
Well, avocados are high in omega-3s. I'm not quite sure. I'm not 100% sure about the smoke point of that. I use 2 oils myself. I only use 2 oils. I use canola oil and olive oil. Both are high in unsaturated, low in saturated, and they have a high smoke point. I don't know the smoke point of avocados. Does anybody know the smoke point? You could Google it and find out. The smoke point of an oil is when you are cooking with it and it starts to break down and smoke. So even a healthy oil turns into an unhealthy oil when it starts smoking. And I'm not sure about an avocado oil. I don't know that, to be honest with you. Although, it would be great in a salad if you weren't cooking with it.
Okay. This one's along the same lines. Is it bad to use olive oil to stir fry vegetables? Some suggest to use grapeseed oil instead if heat is involved.
Yeah, grapeseed oil has a high smoke point too. Light olive oil has a very high smoke point. This is how olive oil is made. At the first crushing, it is extra virgin. At the second crushing, it's virgin. At the next crushing, it's olive oil. At the 4th crushing, it's light olive oil. That has a really high smoke point, and you can buy that.
Okay. This one's asking, is coffee okay?
Well, that's one of the things there's controversy over. There are antioxidants in coffee, too, just like green tea. There's antioxidants, too, but now there's controversy over acrylamides in coffee. So it's one of the things that there's not enough evidence. You've got to make up your own mind on coffee.
Okay. What do you think of alkaline water?
I think that there's no evidence to support that.
Okay.
There's machines you can buy, I think, that are very expensive to do that, and there's absolutely no evidence to support that.
Okay. And what is, in your opinion, the best cookware to use?
I wonder, are you asking about like aluminum, as opposed? Yeah, that's probably what you're. There's no evidence to that. There's some controversy over cooking with aluminum that it causes cancer. Again, there's not enough evidence to come out with that. If you have any doubts about it at all, we know in our hearts what we feel. I say change cookware, but there's no evidence.
Okay, this one, is coconut oil okay to cook with? Is it high in the bad fats?
Coconut oil is a saturated fat, and I know that this is like considered the new magic elixir on the internet, coconut oil. It's a saturated fat. The lady who wrote the foreword for my book is one of the 250 oncology dietitians in the country. And I was getting so many questions about coconut oil, I called Jody and I said, what's the deal on coconut oil? And she said, absolutely not, it's a saturated fat. So I just don't do it.
This one's asking, why is there no recommended daily amount of sugar? And then second is, what is sugar alcohol?
What is sugar alcohol?
Mm-hmm.
Because we're not supposed to have sugar. There's no daily recommended for sugar. We shouldn't have sugar. You should have you shouldn't have like none of it if we could avoid it altogether. Sugar gives us nothing. Sugar's empty calories. There's nothing in it. There's no vitamins. There's nothing. What's the other question about sugar?
What is sugar alcohol?
I don't know. Unless you're thinking that alcohol goes into your bloodstream very quickly and turns into sugar very quickly, if that's what that question is.
Okay. Any advice for getting kids to eat healthy?
I think start them early. Start them early and make it interesting. You know, you can do tacos, you can do pizzas. Don't give the kids a plate of, steamed vegetables. There's plenty of stuff that you can do that's fun. Start them early because, like I said, the odds are against them. So if you can start them early, they won't even get a taste for the bad stuff.
Okay, and that wraps it up.